All right, so you know you want to stay ahead of the curve, right? You're here because you want to get up to speed on what's important fast. But you don't want to drown in a sea of details, am I right?
That's the idea.
Well, you're in the right place because that's what we do, right? Today, we're taking a deep dive into something pretty fascinating. It's called Manus AI.
It is.
It's a new AI agent that's been making some pretty big waves, and we wanted to really dig in and see what it's all about.
Yeah, and we've really gone deep down the rabbit hole with this one.
You have?
Yeah, we have a 4.5-hour course transcript.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of material.
That's a lot of information.
Yeah, this course was packed full of demonstrations and insights about this AI, which comes out of China.
Okay.
And it's designed really from the ground up to do things.
And when we say do things, we're not just talking about your run-of-the-mill chatbot,
No.
right? The ones that just generate text.
Right.
Manus AI, from what we understand, aims to automate much more complex tasks.
That's right.
Things that might normally take you juggling all kinds of different tools and a whole lot of time.
And brain power.
Right. So we're talking controlling web browsers, writing code for applications, and then actually going ahead and deploying those applications as websites, conducting deep research.
Without taking no prompt.
Yeah, often from a single instruction.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So really our goal today is to sift through all of that information and try to understand what are the core capabilities of this AI. What can Manus AI actually do, and what does that mean, for the future?
Yeah.
And the course we looked at provided some really, really interesting examples of what Manus is already capable of doing, which was
Pretty amazing.
pretty wild. Like, I was blown away by some of this stuff.
Me too.
So just to give our listeners a little taste,
Yeah.
we're talking about an AI that can build video games, for example.
Yeah.
They talked about how Manus created a Mario-themed game in the style of Minecraft, then turned around and created a totally different medieval fantasy game.
Right.
So we're talking about real development here.
Exactly.
Then they talked about how Manus could be used to build SaaS tools, software as a service, and even suggested that some of these could become multi-million-dollar businesses.
Potentially.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah.
And then websites,
Forget about it.
forget it, right? Like, forget about your basic website builders.
Yeah.
Like, Manus can apparently create fully functional e-commerce stores ready to sell products.
It's incredible.
SER directories to help people find information, personal websites.
It could even build a website about itself,
It built a website about itself.
which is crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And then on top of all that, it can conduct in-depth research,
Right.
generate detailed presentations and reports based on that research.
Mhm.
It can even create interactive 3D visualizations.
Like, imagine just giving it the prompt to model the moon's position relative to the Earth in 3D.
Wow.
And it goes and does that.
That's wild. So it's crazy.
We have a lot to uncover here.
Yeah.
But, for our listeners, you're busy people.
Mm-hmm.
You want to know what's up.
Right.
And you don't want to get, lost in the weeds.
Glossed in the sauce.
So we're going to break this all down for you.
Exactly.
And hopefully, along the way...
Maybe those aha moments.
Yeah, those little aha moments where you're like, oh, wow, I get it now.
Absolutely.
So let's get started, shall we?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's unpack Manus AI. What can it do, and what's got everyone so excited?
Well, at its core, the big thing with Manus AI is autonomous task execution.
Okay.
Right? That's what the creator of this course really hammered on.
Mm-hmm.
He emphasized that you can give it a really complex goal,
Right.
and it can figure out all the individual steps needed to reach that goal and then carry out those steps without you having to constantly handhold it along the way.
That's impressive.
Yeah, right?
Like, that's a game changer.
Not a game. Yeah, because that's kind of the missing link with a lot of the AI tools that we see.
It is.
It's like they can do part of it,
Yeah.
but then you have to come in and kind of, manually push it along to
Right.
get to the final result.
Exactly.
So can you give us an example from the course transcript of what you mean by complex goal?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the examples that they went to was the prompt, create an SEO content writer similar to Jasper.
Okay. Now, and for those who don't know, Jasper is a...
Yeah, Jasper is an AI content creation platform.
Yeah.
It's very well known, and it's received a lot of investment. I think they raised $125 million.
Yeah.
So it's a
Goal player.
big player in the space.
Yeah.
And they essentially gave Manus that one prompt.
Wow.
And it went off and wrote all the code for the front end. That's the part that you see.
Okay.
And the back end, that's all the logic that goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Created all the necessary files and actually deployed a working version of this tool online.
So essentially, from one sentence, from one instruction, it built something that could potentially take a team of human developers and designers a significant amount of time to create.
Yeah. I mean, that's the implication.
That's pretty wild.
Right.
That's insane.
They also gave it the prompt to build an SEO directory website.
Okay.
And it went off and created a website with content, with the design, and even hosted it.
Okay.
All from, one or two initial instructions.
So it's not just generating text and images.
Yeah.
It's actually performing actions on the internet.
Yes.
Which is another level.
Absolutely.
So this brings us to the second core capability here, which is that Manus can interact with the web.
Right.
Okay. It can browse the internet like a human would.
Like you or I would use Google, right?
Yeah, exactly.
To find information.
To find information.
But then it can actually take that information and use it to perform tasks.
So it understands what it's reading.
Yeah. And it can apply it.
And it can use it.
Which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, so there were some specific examples in the course transcript about this, right?
Yeah, so one example was that someone used Manus to research how AI agents could potentially change the world.
Okay.
And then another one was analyzing data from Google Trends related to the stock market to see if there are any correlations.
Interesting.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that they mentioned that Manus has these abilities called vision and computer use.
Okay.
So that implies that it can visually interpret what's on a web page.
Oh, so it can see what's on a web page.
Right, and then interact with elements on the page like buttons and links.
So it can see and click.
Yeah, essentially can browse the web just like a human.
Which is, again, another level.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
That's huge.
It's a big step forward in AI.
So moving on from there, let's talk about the technical side of things.
Okay.
So we talked about how it can write code and deploy these applications, right? So can you give us a few examples from the course of what types of code it can generate and what types of projects it deployed?
Yeah, so they talked about how it deployed a fully functional e-commerce website designed to sell Pokemon.
Okay.
Again, all just from like a simple prompt, seemingly.
Wow.
Other examples were creating a local SEO directory website and deploying that.
Okay.
And then they also had it build a very simple SEO cost calculator using HTML, which is the basic language of web pages.
So it can do front-end and back-end coding.
Yes.
And deploy those applications.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, and it's not just limited to those things, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so we've talked about, like, games. We've talked about, these tools. We've talked about full websites.
Yeah.
Like, what else can it create?
Well, like you mentioned, it can create games.
Right.
It can create tools like we talked about, like the SEO lead generation tool.
Right.
It can create presentations, and it can create reports, especially based on its research and data analysis capabilities, which we talked about.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
create a pretty diverse set of outputs.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so interesting, right? Because it's not just a one-trick pony.
No, it's not just a large language model.
Right.
It's an agent that can actually do things.
Yeah. So now Manus AI obviously doesn't exist in a vacuum.
Right.
So how does it compare to other AI tools that are out there that people might be familiar with?
Well, the creator of the course had a pretty strong opinion about that.
Did he?
He did.
What did he say?
He said that in his experience, Manus is better and more powerful than any other virtual assistant that he's seen.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a bold statement.
It is.
So how does it compare to something like, let's say, ChatGPT, which a lot of people are familiar with these days?
Right. Well, ChatGPT, it's great at generating text, answering questions, even, writing pieces of code. But typically, it still requires a human to do the next steps.
Right.
Take that code, copy and paste it, figure out how to deploy it, and so on.
Right. Whereas Manus sort of takes care of more of that for you.
Exactly. That's what they emphasize. The autonomous execution and deployment is what really sets it apart.
Now, there are also some alternatives to Manus mentioned in the course, right?
Yeah. They talk about Open Manus. They talk about Claude. They talk about Convergence AI. And then something called OWL.
Okay, so let's touch on each of those really briefly.
Sure.
So starting with Open Manus.
Yeah, so Open Manus is an open source alternative to Manus that you can run on your own computer.
Okay.
It's free.
Okay.
But the trade-off is that the user interface is not as, user-friendly.
Okay, so it's a little more technical.
Yeah, it's very technical. It's mainly controlled through text commands in a terminal.
Okay.
And it may not be as powerful.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
So what about Claude?
Claude is good for coding tasks.
Okay.
It has a more user-friendly interface.
Okay, then Open Manus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Convergence AI is a free option that's good for like administrative tasks.
Okay.
And at the time of the recording, it had no limits on the length of prompts that you could give it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And then Al is another free AI agent.
Okay.
But they said that their initial tests with it weren't very impressive.
Okay, so not as powerful.
Yeah, seemingly not as powerful as the other ones.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So I think a question that might come up for some people is Manus really doing something new, or is it just, cleverly using a browser with like a language model like Claude behind the scenes?
Right.
Does the course address that?
It does. So the creator of the course, he argues that Manus is doing more than just browser use with Claude.
Oh,
he says that the autonomous capabilities,
okay,
like being able to do multi-step tasks on its own,
okay,
and its ability to access and use a terminal, which gives it much more direct control over the computer system, and its deployment features,
right,
are all key differentiators that set it apart from just being a browser with a language model.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
So this all sounds really exciting, like super powerful stuff.
It is.
But what's the catch? Can anyone just start using Manus AI right now?
That's a good question.
Is it out there?
So access to Manus AI is kind of a big hurdle right now.
Okay.
It initially requires an invitation code.
Oh. Okay.
And there's a pretty long waiting list.
Really?
Yeah.
How long is the waiting list?
I think they said it was around 2 million people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then on top of that, there are usage limits, at least during this beta period.
Okay.
I said you could only use something like 3 prompts per day.
Okay, so very limited access.
Yeah.
But you mentioned there's this open source alternative, Open Manus.
Right.
So that might be a way for people to at least get a taste of what this technology is capable of, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they said that if you want to learn how to set up and run Open Manus, there are instructions available in this community called the AI Profit Boardroom.
Okay.
And because it's open source, you can just run it on your own computer.
Oh.
So you don't have to rely on,
on their servers or anything.
You're not limited by their, access restrictions or anything like that.
And is Manus like a finished product? Is it all polished, bug-free?
Well, they did say that it's still, a bit buggy.
Okay.
And that it doesn't always work perfectly.
Okay.
And also they mentioned that any apps that you create and host on their platform may not be persistent.
Okay.
So it sounds like it's still...
So it's still early days.
Yeah, still early days.
Got it. So,
but the potential's definitely there.
So the potential's huge, but it's still under development. So let's zoom out a little bit and talk about the bigger picture.
Yep.
Like, what are the potential implications of having an AI agent that can do all of these things?
Yeah.
What kind of impact could it have on various industries or even just like society as a whole?
I mean, the course really emphasizes that the potential applications and the impacts are huge.
Right.
One thing they talk about is that it could potentially replace a lot of the work that's currently done by virtual assistants and executive assistants.
Okay.
Scheduling, research, all that stuff.
All that kind of admin stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of that could potentially be automated.
What else could it impact?
Well, it could lead to like a massive acceleration of software development and website creation.
Right. Because it can automate so much of the process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and that would, reduce the time and resources required to make new software and online services.
Right. So things could move a lot faster.
Yeah.
And potentially...
And cheaper.
Cheaper. Yeah. Yeah.
And it could also significantly impact research and data analysis,
Because it can do it so fast.
Exactly. It can do it so much faster than a human can.
Yeah. So things that might have taken, weeks or months could be done in hours or minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the course creator also touches on the fact that, there's the potential for job displacement.
Right.
He actually mentioned estimates from Goldman Sachs.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, he really hammered on the point that it's important to understand these AI agents.
Right.
Because of the potential, economic shifts that they could bring about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think people, there's kind of two camps right now, right?
Yeah.
There's the people who are afraid of it,
Mhm.
and there are people who are, embracing it.
Right.
And I think the reality is it's probably going to be somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, most likely.
It's not all doom and gloom.
Right.
And it's not all, roses and sunshine either.
Yeah,
It's going to be somewhere in between.
most likely.
But understanding it is the key.
That's the key.
Yeah, and I think that's why, we're doing the show
Well,
is
yeah.
because we want to help people understand these new technologies as they come out
Absolutely.
so that they can make their own informed decisions about how they want to interact with them
And what their potential is.
and what the potential is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what other evidence was in the course about just how powerful Manus AI really is?
Well, they mentioned this viral video
Oh, yeah.
showing Manus controlling 50 different screens simultaneously.
I've seen that.
You've seen that.
Yeah, that was insane.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Right.
And it really shows you how it can handle these complex operations.
Yeah.
And then there was also this story about how it was briefing someone who was driving a Tesla.
So real-time assistance.
Yeah, like in the moment.
Wow.
Which is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And they also talked about how Manus performs on this benchmark called the GA benchmark,
Okay.
which is apparently a measure of how well AI models can perform in areas like deep research.
Okay.
And they said that Manus outperforms other models in that area.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So very powerful stuff.
Very powerful.
Now, of course, a lot of people listening are probably thinking, okay, this is all very impressive, but how could I actually use this technology or the alternatives to, make money?
Yeah, right. Like, how can we monetize
How
that?
can you monetize this?
Yeah.
And the course did touch on that, right?
It did, yeah.
So what were some of the suggestions?
So one suggestion was to create websites that generate revenue through, like, affiliate links
Okay.
or by selling products directly.
Okay.
And they specifically mentioned using Claude
Okay.
to help with writing the sales copy for those websites.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another approach they mentioned was to offer services
Okay.
based on the skills of Manus or even Open Manus, like coding assistance, website building, research and analysis.
Okay. So essentially
Yeah.
providing those services to clients.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've talked about what Manus AI is, what it can do,
Right.
how it compares to other options,
Yes.
and even some of the potential implications and ways to use it.
Yeah.
So for our listeners, what are the key takeaways they should remember from this deep dive?
Well, I think the big takeaway is that Manus AI is a really impressive and rapidly advancing technology.
Yeah.
Its ability to do all these things independently, interact with the web, generate and deploy code, really makes it a potential game changer in the AI world.
Right.
And hopefully we've given you a good understanding of what it can do.
Without overwhelming,
players.
without getting too technical.
With the technical details, yeah.
Yeah.
But, it's important to remember that it is still early days.
Yeah. This is still a technology under development.
Very much so.
Access is limited. It's in beta. It has some imperfections.
Right.
But the potential is clearly there.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what makes it so exciting.
Exactly. It's a
Yeah.
glimpse into the future
Yeah.
of what AI might be capable of.
Yeah. And and that brings us to our final thought for you today.
Okay.
So we've talked about all these amazing things Manus can do. Think about the implications of AI agents like this becoming even more integrated into our lives,
Right.
our work, our society, everything. If you had access to Manus, or even if you decided to, explore these open source alternatives like Open Manus, what would you build?
Yeah.
What would you automate?
What problem would you solve?
Yeah, what problem would you solve? It's a question worth pondering
Absolutely.
as this technology continues to evolve and become potentially more widely available.
Yeah.
So think about that. Until next time, see you then.